It stems from the gaming industry. There are a lot of Gen Z students and entrepreneurs who see the corporate ladder and they say, I don't want that. It doesn't make sense for my generation. What makes sense to us is generating value in virtual worlds, which we're already doing in Fortnite. We're already doing it in Roblox.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. Thanks again for making this one of the most downloaded podcasts about the future of work. If you enjoy what we do, please like, comment, and share in your favorite podcast app. And we'll keep sharing amazing conversations like the one we have for today. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the world's most loved AI platform for IT and HR employee service. I'm also an investor and an advisor to more than 30 AI-first companies, and as you know, a firm believer in the power of technology to make humans better. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly on this show, and of course, the added bonus is you get one AI fun fact each week. Today's fun fact. We try to share balanced opinions about AI and the future of work on this podcast. Here's the counterpoint to what we usually discuss. Sharon Goldman writes in VentureBeat about the forthcoming book, AI Snake Oil, by Princeton professor Arvind Narayanan and his PhD student Sayash Kapoor, who argue that the current AI hype has spiraled out of control. Narayanan started a Substack in 2019 to dispute the hype around what AI could do then. He says the current wave of optimism is different than what he criticized in 2019, and he admits he didn't expect generative AI would have such a profound impact on consumers. Most of his earlier ranting was about predictive AI versus generative AI. Now, my personal commentary, generative AI, which predicts the next token in a string, is really a form of predictive AI. And taking pot shots at AI back in 2019 before ChatGPT really lacked vision, just like uniformly praising or celebrating AI today lacks vision. Read the full interview and let me know what you think. Professor Narayanan, if you're listening, join me on the podcast. You deserve a chance to defend your research and certainly share the highlights from the new book with our listeners. As always, we'll link to the full article in today's show notes. Now, shifting to this week's conversation, we've met future of work visionaries recently like Gary Bolles, Dr. John Boudreau, Mark McCrindle, and most recently, Josh Bersin. All have shared unique perspectives on how AI is redefining the employee experience. Today's guest belongs on that Mount Rushmore of future of work luminaries. Josh Drean is co-founder and director of employee experience at the Work3 Institute, AI plus work advisor at the Harvard Innovation Labs, and co-author of Employment is Dead, due out in 2024 from the Harvard Business Review Press. Josh's work has been featured in the Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Fast Company, and The Economist. And he's made appearances on the Today Show, NBC, and Fox Business. Josh speaks internationally to bring work tech insights to digital-first leaders who value human-centric work experiences. I've been looking forward to this one. Without further ado, Josh, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. Let's get started by having you share a bit more about your background and how you got into this space.
Thank you for having me on the show, Dan. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Definitely don't feel like I belong on Mount Rushmore next to Josh Bersin and the other greats you mentioned. But excited to be here nonetheless. That was a pretty extensive intro, so I thank you for that. That covers it mostly. You know, I'm really passionate about how emerging technologies are going to impact the future of work, how it's impacting the now of work. And that's a bit about the research that I do at the Harvard Innovation Labs. That's why I'm authoring this book, Employment is Dead, which is a pretty large stake in the ground. My co-author, Deborah Perry-Pashoni, is incredible to work with. So we write about how AI and Web3 technologies are disrupting our relationship with work, that it is no longer an industrial model of employment where I am completing tasks and working 9 to 5 and receiving a paycheck for the value that I am generating for the company. we view all of that as old school and outdated. And so what we do at the Work3 Institute is we work with organizations who are not just futuristic and forward thinking, but also human centric, that they're interested in developing a stronger relationship with their workforce. And so we teach them not only how to do that in today's world around employee experience design, work is not a contract, it is a relationship, but also how do we kind of push into decentralization, which I believe is the future of work, where employees have more autonomy over the work that they do, more creative guidance and responsibility, and greater flexibility over the work that they do. We're learning so much right now about this return to office movement that is very top of mind as we are moving into the fall. So I'd love to jump in there with you. And also thank you for that fact about snake oil. AI snake oil it's wonderful. Maybe just a quick commentary on that as well, how the metaverse was the hottest ticket this time last year, and now no one wants to talk about it. It's the hype cycle that we see time and time again. And regardless of what we call these emerging technologies, they're coming. They're important to be focusing on, and hopefully we can shed some light on that today.
Well, speaking of crypto and the metaverse, we've all heard of Web3, but nobody's talking about Work3. What was Work 1 and 2, and then what's going to define Work 3?
Yeah, great question. I feel like we kind of covered that a little bit, as we saw this major disruptive at the beginning of the industrial metaverse, or I guess the industrial revolution rather, where you're no longer, a farmer, you're moving into the big city, you're working in factories. It was a major pivot for individuals, and we're continuing to see emerging technologies like change the way that we work and change the way that we move. And so if we would call that Work 1, Work 2 probably is emerging alongside a Web 2.0 model, which was the birth of the internet, that we can now get information anywhere and everywhere we are. And it went from being a static, looking up information on a search engine, gleaning that information and using it to forward your own thoughts, your own work. We started to embrace more of a relationship with the internet, how we can post our own blog and get comments on that, or social media really kind of opened up our eyes to what's possible, especially in the marketing industry, how you see, marketers joining social media and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the digital world. Web3 is the next iteration of the internet. It is the semantic web, as we like to call it, where we can interact with each other, not just 2D on a screen like this, but we can interact in a 3D immersive virtual world, whether you want to call that the metaverse, as Meta once upon a time called it, if you want to call it spatial computing, which is what Apple is starting to call it. But regardless, you're starting to see the emergence of these technologies that are providing a more immersive experience on the internet, if we can call that. And it comes along with blockchain technologies. It comes along with opportunities to work in a virtual office. And so I feel like there are a lot of opportunities for us to expand into a global talent marketplace where we can hire talent from anywhere we are in the world, where we can sit next to our virtual avatar coworkers, where we can have more ownership over the work that we do. There is a wonderful horizon coming that is powered by AI. And I think we should embrace it rather than run from it, which is what it feels like we're doing right now. It feels like with the RTO moment that we are seeing, leaders of all shapes and sizes who say we do better work when we're in person. And I don't refute that at all. But I do see that most employees still prefer a work-life balance that is provided remotely. And the numbers show that we still are effective working remotely. And so I feel like the pandemic definitely kind of pushed us further ahead than we ever thought we would be. But I don't think returning to the office without experiencing the emerging technologies for what they can do for us digitally, I think that's a big mistake.
Gary Bolles on this podcast gave an interesting definition of the future of work and the future of our relationships with our employers. He said, we're moving toward a work net instead of a workforce. And the work net is where employees stitch together jobs that they love at companies they love. And your career will no longer be defined by, call it the logo on your business card, which we no longer have anymore. But those of us who are old remember business cards. And it will more be defined by a set of tasks or skills or projects that we do that might span many companies. That seems to at least have parallels with how you're defining Work3. What's your thought on what that kind of changing, you mentioned the kind of changing nature of your relationship with an employer. Is that consistent with your research?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's a Web 2.5 version of looking at it. Like, we're already moving towards the gig economy, full-time employees loyal to one company for more than 3 years is almost unheard of. That model ceases to exist today. And you're absolutely right. Calling it a work net is really fun. I just read a great book called Workforce Ecosystems, how we are embracing the concentric circles of, core contributors that branch out to contractors and freelancers. Where I do differ on that definition, or at least I should say beyond that horizon, is a Web3 model for work, which isn't just completing tasks and projects for different companies, mixing and matching several streams of income. It's that you get full autonomy over the work that you do, the creative ability to build and grow and even identify projects that would be valuable for companies and hook in ways that make sense. There's a lot of fun research coming out of this. I call it fun because it stems from the gaming industry. There are a lot of Gen Z students and entrepreneurs who see the corporate ladder and they say, I don't want that. It doesn't make sense for my generation. What makes sense to us is generating value in virtual worlds, which we're already doing in Fortnite. We're already doing it in Roblox. We're already building esports teams and generating money in ways that don't even make sense to, traditional corporate models. So I feel and I believe that we are moving to a world where if you are using a global talent marketplace, for instance, internally at your organization, we expand that to include all workers, all value generators, whatever you want to call them in the future. And it's such a different model because it's trustless on one hand, but very trustworthy. For instance, if I am applying for a job, it's not a self-reported resume that you look at and not a self-reported job description from the company where you find a match, both parties come to the table and you say, well, you lied on your resume. And they say, well, you lied on the job description. That's kind of a funny meme that you can see going around. We can actually verify their skills and their capabilities on the blockchain. We don't have to have humans so involved in the process. We can leverage AI and smart contracts to match projects with your skill set and your preferences for work. So it almost becomes a place where you pull up the app and you hit work and you go do your thing and you work with a lot of different teams doing what you love. And that's the key part for me, is that we're bringing back fulfillment to the equation. Right now, there's a relentless drive towards productivity. And I understand in a capitalistic society, that is the number one metric when you are looking at how well your employees are performing. But if we ignore and continue to ignore fulfillment in the workplace, we start to see we're continuing to see a massive disengaged workforce. We are seeing just this overall apathy towards each other in a way. And, we currently are jumping from job to job. I think very soon we're going to be jumping from traditional employment to a Web3 model that provides many more of the needs that employees are asking to be met at the corporate workplace, but aren't being met for a myriad of reasons.
Employment is Dead, as we discussed before we started recording, is a provocative title, and it makes sense hearing you describe what the thesis of the book is. But hearing you talk about it in a little more detail makes me think that employment is alive. And I love the way you talk about humanizing the experience of what it means to be a human at work and what it means to bring your best self to work using technology. I realize that might not sell as many books, but kind of reconcile the positive tone that you bring to talking about the future of employment with the thesis, or at least the title of the book.
Yeah, I mean, the foundation of everything that we talk about is employees are unhappy. That's a fact. That is playing out in front of us significantly, and it needs to change. And it's bothersome when we see organizations say it doesn't actually matter what employees want because we're headed towards an economic recession or whatever excuses we use. Because employees have less options for work, we can leverage our power to make them do what they don't want to do. That is an old school model for work that worked once upon a time, and it might be working seemingly right now, but you don't think that a second great resignation is around the corner when things improve. You don't think that when more options are available, that employees are going to wholeheartedly leave your organization for a better horizon for them. That's what scares me. And what scares me the most is that companies aren't even willing to talk about it. I mean, HR all day, right? They will talk about how we design an employee experience that they will love so that we stay longer, like with less attrition, better performance, a more cohesive culture. We talk about that all day. And yet, for some reason, we're not bringing employees to the table to design the technology or even ask them what their preferences are. It blows my mind that we are just in the dark when it comes to what employees want, because traditionally they haven't had power in the relationship. You're a pawn in the game. You do exactly what we say. We'll pay you. And if you don't want to do it, get in line. Someone else will do it for you. We are very much moving away from that model. And very much so, Gen Z will not come work for you if they feel like you are pressuring them to work in a certain way that doesn't feel authentic or efficient to them. So at the Work3 Institute, we raised the flag of saying, look, employment is dead because employees are unhappy, and employment signifies this contractual-based model for employment where I'm the boss, I tell you what to do, and if you don't, get out, right? That will cease to exist. We saw that a major change in the way that we engage with customers. Now that customers have options, we better design experiences for them that they love, or else they are going to vote with their wallet and go somewhere else. What's to say that employees aren't going to follow that exact same model? And we can argue that employees are customer number one, because if we have unhappy employees on the front line, how do we expect to design thrilling experiences for our customers? And that's the relationship that has to change no matter what.
We can't have this discussion without talking about the impact that not just technology, but AI is having on jobs and tasks within jobs. And although most economists would agree that AI is a disinflationary force because it makes the workforce, or it makes the labor pool more productive, you and I know that there's a little more nuance, because it can cause employees to feel destabilized and question, what it is that makes them human, that makes them love work. What's the future of their career, career that they chose, maybe after spending, who knows, 2, 4, 6, 8+ years in school, and all of a sudden their colleague is a bot, and the bot can do a lot of what they thought only humans could do, maybe better than them. So how do we factor that into the new Work3, the new world of work, and what it means to be an employee, maybe a Gen Zer graduating into this workforce where there are a bunch of exciting, challenging, complex dynamics that no other generation has had to face?
Such a great question, Dan, and so palpable. And I'd love to get your opinions on that as well, that exact same question, because we do have the entire school system, which was set up on like tests and writing papers, is like already was struggling. But man, do we need to pivot? And workers coming out of 4 years of school just to be like, what marketable skills do I even have? It is a real concern and needs to be addressed. And so I will say, first and foremost, you need to learn AI. Like, there are two camps here: people who are afraid of AI and people who are embracing AI and just being curious and trying to figure it out. If you've learned anything from the disruption of technology in the past, you will learn that the people who are afraid and don't dig in become obsolete, and those who do and become curious survive. They learn and grow. And so, will AI take your job today? No. Will it down the road? I don't think so. I think someone who has learned AI and knows how to embrace it will. But the problem that I see with corporations right now as they find their path forward is there's a subset of employers who say, let's use AI to remove the cost of our human capital. Wouldn't it be great to save some money over here? Or let's use it to do better at tracking productivity. I just posted on my Instagram this video of a company that's using AI to measure the number of cups of coffee that each of their workers makes in their shift and the amount of time that customers are spending in their store. And it blows my mind that that's your application, because it's not distractive. When you look at these technologies, sure, you can say I have 100 workers and AI can help augment the job of 10 workers. So let's fire 90% of our staff and just focus on the 10 doing their work. What a terrible way to think about AI. There's a whole nother subset of workers, of employers who are more interested in how can we take our 100 employees and 10x their output. That to me is so much more positive in where we can head. And I literally just had this conversation with one of my colleagues who is a developer, and he said, look, there's never not code that we have to be writing. And even if we got to the end of our project, there's like passion projects that we want to run at and other things. Imagine the worlds we could build with AI supporting us. And that is what excites me about what's coming. But I'm curious from your perspective, kind of where you stand on all of this.
That example you shared about measuring the cups of coffee is one of the most disturbing things I've heard in over 200 episodes that we've recorded. And the reason is because we have these conversations about how AI is a transcendent technology, how it can disrupt the workplace in a positive way. And then just from the perspective of humanity, how it's going to lead to safer cities, less poverty, less hunger in the world, famine. It could eradicate cancer much, much more quickly than if we weren't using algorithms and the power of data. I am an AI optimist. I'm an enthusiast about where this technology can go. And I feel like it's incumbent on us as leaders and all the leaders listening to this podcast to think about how we embrace AI and related technologies to accentuate the humanness of who we are. And like you said, I love the words you used. There's always a passion project. There's always that thing that I'd rather be doing than mundane tasks at work. And gosh, if we could use AI to take away 4 to 8 hours of friction that exists between us and our employment each week, just imagine the productivity dividend of 20% more productive, happier employees who bring their best selves to work. Like, yeah, I'm biased, but to me, that's the future of work.
I love it. I was just on stage at MIT with some of these amazing thought leaders who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible on the industrial metaverse. And they share the same sentiment as you, is that there are a lot of terrible ways that AI can disrupt us and make life worse. But alongside that is the yang, which is it can make things so much better. And I don't know about you, but knowing that I could go into a virtual office and automate a lot of the processes that are on my plate, leveraging my personal avatar AI infused quote unquote bot, they can go to meetings for me and they can make decisions based on my signature preferences. And I can train this model to be really close to who I am. And what I love about that is that not only will I be much more effective, I will do less of the stuff that I hate. 90% of the work that I'm doing, I just hate so I can get to the 10% that I love. Let's flip that model. Now we're doing 90% of what we love because we automate the rest. That's the exciting part of all of this, is that we can use these generative AI models to improve our station. And that is the future of work in my mind.
All right, so Josh, you would have gotten a kick out of this. We had this guest on, this is a while ago back. His name is James Lawton, and he's the head of robotics at a company called Zebra, which I only really know as a barcoding company, a QR code barcoding company for industrial uses. And coming into the show, I admit I had some biases about the role of robots in manufacturing facilities, that they were there, essentially to do a better job than humans can do, replace the humans. And, it's just one example of a dying industry. And he convinced me otherwise, because he said it this way, think about all of the laborers in those manufacturing facilities who can't be fully replaced by robots, but the lifetime that they can provide that service gets extended with things like smart exoskeletons. People who develop knee injuries or joint injuries and things like that. These are people who the labor force might not value for other skills they have, and they're really good at picking and packing. And when you add smart robots to the picking and packing, it just makes the humans that much more capable of doing that job. And I believe that that's a metaphor for a lot of the jobs that we talk about, where, I credit Microsoft with popularizing the term of a co-pilot. Everybody deserves a smart best friend who's there to help you through the workday, answer your tough questions, maybe physically get you through the day. But it's always in the spirit of humans driving the plane. You got a co-pilot that's there to make sure the plane lands safe. But it's really not about replacing jobs or dehumanizing people with AI. It's all in the spirit of how can we use AI to bring out the best in people and make them have more fulfilling lives.
Yeah, what a fascinating world, that human robot synthesis. And honestly, I just want to stop people from the 9 to 5 grind that they're doing in the factory and say, do you actually like this? I mean, sure, you've got buds, sure, lunch is great, but the work that you're actually doing, do you like it? Or is it just a legacy job that you took because of whatever reason? Instead, what if you were able to create a world that made sense to you and just unlocked your passions? I think YouTube has been an incredible precursor to what's possible in Web3, because it created an anything economy, which is you can make a video and have a channel about anything you want. And you will find passionate individuals who love mini cooking or love pranks or love gaming, right? It created this whole world where you can watch professional gamers go out and play. And not only do you get to watch them, you get to talk to them live, and you get to premiere whatever, video they're launching with your friends, and you can watch it in a digital space. And so when we look at models that are emerging like Roblox, or the Sandbox is a great example. I was just on stage with Sebastian Bourget in South Korea, and he was talking about the jobs that are available that have never been possible before. You can be a digital landowner, you can be a creator, and you can exist in these digital worlds. Even if you love trucking, right? Or you love the factory, go build a digital version of that and build some value there for your followers. And there's monetary gain there, whether it's cryptocurrency in the form of a token or actual money. There is value to be generated in this world. And I just think it's an evolution of, hey, let's stop getting worried about our factory jobs being taken. Let robots do that. Let's go build a creative world in Fortnite and invite people into this world and hang out with our friends and generate value and be human. That's the point that I'm making. That we get to be human together in ways that make better sense than not.
There was a study published this week in an academic journal saying that people who self-report having had more kind of serendipitous engagement with strangers. report being happier than
Mm.
people who live more of kind of a closed life. So just to maybe challenge, the interesting, very thought-provoking view of employment in the metaverse, could it lead to more isolation? And what burden does the operator or the kind of the owner of the metaverse, or maybe even like a YouTube property, like in the example you gave, what's the burden on the operator of the metaverse to guarantee that there's authentic connections and relationships and we can trust what goes on in the metaverse, given that it could have the impact of further isolating people or making it easier to commit crimes, or kind of lower the barrier to some of the things that we always try to get rid of in society?
Yeah, great and like philosophical debate, right? So the real answer is like I don't know, but I can give you my hot take, and this might be a little controversial, but I I believe that going more digital will also be more human. Back in my day, when I wanted to hang out with my friends, I would go over to their house, we would play until the streetlights came on, and then we would go home. I watch my son and even his best friend across the street, our neighbors will run over, open the front door, be like, "Hey, are you on? Cool." Shut the door, go back home, log into their Fortnite, and they have such an immersive experience together. Because it's not just hanging out and like poking bugs and riding your bikes. It's we have created a framework for you to develop skills and collaborate as a team and achieve objectives and be so passionate about what you're doing that you can't even fathom losing. And you get so into it and achieving ranks and moving forward that I just see these kids unlock a side of them that does not exist in the corporate world today. And so sure, we can be afraid of, like isolation and there's a lot of studies right now that show that social media has actually been harmful to kids. And I don't deny that. Like I was a youth speaker going into middle schools and high schools for 10 years, and I saw teens just like become isolated. I believe that these digital worlds will fix that. That yes, we might be physically isolated a little bit more, but like we already are isolated on our computers, right? We're all already isolated in these ways. And so it's just how do we become more human and more digital at the same time is what is the code that we need to crack.
Sounds like you've done a really good job navigating that tricky kind of parenting conundrum of what's the right amount of social media, and how do I create new opportunities for my kids without limiting them from the love of the outdoors and the happy accidents that happen when you're catching bugs and that sort of thing outdoors. Where do you draw the line as a parent, and maybe what's your coaching to other parents?
Yeah, now we're diving into like parenting, which look, I have three boys. They're all under the age of 7. Every single day is a different day. Every single approach is different for the individual child and individual families. So this is not parenting advice at all. But I will say that I do err more on the side of I want them to unlock their passions, their skills, and their capabilities digitally because it's just as important as physically. So my son is in hockey and we go hiking and we do all of the physical things, but I am not someone who's like, oh, screen time is going to break your brain. I am very much in the camp of if he wants to be a professional gamer, I will facilitate that because he's going to be paying my income someday off of that. And so it is finding the balance. But I will say, bottom line for me is like, how do you find the balance between trust and control with your kids? You obviously can't give them full control over what they do online because they're going to find things and get into things that are addictive and probably not great. But if you fully control that, they're going to go create an Instagram account or a TikTok on their friend's phone. And so we have to evolve with them. We have to find that balance between, hey, I trust you to spread your wings a little bit, but I also have a structure, guardrails, if you will, on how far I will let you do that. So trust and verify in a way.
I'm a little bit ahead of you on my parenting journey. My girls are 13 and 15, and we frequently have conversations about, what are the skills that they should be investing in high school? One's in 8th grade and one's in 10th grade that are future proof. And it's a hard discussion to have because, to your earlier point, the education system has not caught up with the real world. What are some of those skills that you'd like your boys to be learning now that you feel like will be relevant regardless of how much they're helped by AI or technology when they enter the workforce?
Ooh, yeah, 100% agreed with you. And like, if the education system has failed to catch up, like we're on a rocket ship right now, so it's over in my mind. Give it 10 years, my boys are. Is college going to be able to evolve fast enough to give them the experiences that they need, or do they go do it by living it, the entrepreneurial pursuits for the next 4 years? And I feel like Gen Z is already voting on this. But I will say the foundation for me is I want to help unlock their passions and what they're good at naturally. Like, I don't want to put them in and college has tried to do this, right? It's like, go chase general, go take general classes and figure it out for 2 years. Well, we don't have 2 years is kind of the mentality. And they can find whatever they want online very easily. And so in my mind, we first and foremost need to help them find where their passions are and align there. And then what skills do they need to do it to the best of their abilities? That's the balance between productivity and fulfillment. What work is going to be fulfilling to them? And so there is a long list of, look, regardless, you have to learn AI, period, Gen AI, whatever you want to call it down the road. And there's debate that we're oversaturating it, right? Like, find out how these emerging technologies can benefit you in a way that makes sense for you in your career. Find ways to be entrepreneurial and run at it. And that's the departure, I would say, from traditional employment. It's not go 4 years to college, find a job like that. That's just Gen Z. I'm sorry, I'll say it again. Gen Z and especially Gen Alpha don't see that model. They see a YouTube model, which is, wow, like people are washing garbage cans out in their neighborhood and making $200 an hour. Some random like influencer is doing this. I can do that in my neighborhood too. I'm just going to go knock on some doors, wash out some garbage cans, and make way more money than, say, working for $6 an hour at some, fast food chain, which, there's a lot of problems going on there that we need to figure out with employment. But I see my younger brother, who is Gen Z, who is out there like making stickers and selling them online, something that is just wouldn't have even crossed my mind at that age. He's never had a traditional job, and yet he makes more money than I did at his age doing a paper route. So the traditional model is dead. I will say that again. The younger generation is finding new ways of making income by what they're passionate about, and that is the future of work.
Passion is future proof. I love that concept. I think that's something I'd like all the parents out there to hear. Now, Josh, I know this one sped by, but we're bad out of time, but you're not getting off the hot seat without answering one last question for me. So let's say we're having a version of this conversation in 15 years when your boys are entering the workforce or whatever it is that we call it then. What's one thing that you and I are talking about then that is just commonplace at work, but that today would seem like science fiction?
Being your own boss. Working in a decentralized model where you don't have a boss, you don't have a corporate structure that tells you exactly what you need to do, a centralized group of decision makers who know better than everyone else and are making decisions that are disseminated down the hierarchy of the organization. And the frontline workers, their only job is to implement and do task-based work. That will disappear forever. I truly believe that. I truly believe that some of these big companies are going to give way to DAOs, which are run on a smart contract and incentivize their core contributors based on the value that they generate. It's not going to be here's a project that we put in front of you, and here's the team that you work with. You need to get it done in 2 months, and these are the tasks and the skills that you need in order to do so. And we're going to be watching you every step of the way. It's not going to be that. It's going to be, I'm super passionate about this. I've built up this resume. It's verified on the blockchain, and I am just going to open up the app and hit go. AI is going to match me with the team that best fits my skill set and passions, and we're just going to have fun building things, and not only like building it just to hand it off to an organization. You get to own a part of that. You are a shareholder in this experience. It's no longer an arbitrary, here's how much equity you get in our company, now go work for us. It's true value generated by you, and that is the future of work.
Hey, Josh, you got to come back on the show another time when that vision becomes a reality. Maybe it's not 15 years, maybe it's 10 or even fewer, but we got to have you back. This is a fun start to a conversation. It's very important.
Well, thanks, Dan. And I also agree, realize that I could be completely off. I've been off so often, but again, staying rooted in employees are unhappy right now. And the solution is not a better experience at work. It is a new model for work.
You know what, Josh, by having these conversations, we're inspiring the next generation of leaders. We're actually catalyzing the future of work just by having a dialogue.
Well, hey, future leaders who are listening to this, take this information for what it's worth.
Brilliant. Well, Josh, where can the audience find out more about you and the great work you're doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that. At Josh Drean, I'm highly active on all socials. If you're big on TikTok, find me there. If you're a LinkedIn individual, I post daily on LinkedIn. Very active, would love to have a conversation. You can also check out our work at work3.me. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going. It would be great to connect.
This is so much fun. Josh, thanks for hanging out.
Awesome, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Good. Well, that's a wrap for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Terschen from PeopleRain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.